Hello and welcome to this week's worship at home. As you know, my name is Samantha and I'm one of the Methodist ministers here in Northampton. The first hymn that I chose for today is God Moves in a Mysterious Way. It's a really well-known hymn, the words of which were written by William Cowper, one of England's greatest hymn writers. Yet William, though, didn't write this hymn from a place of confidence or ease. He lived much of his life under the shadow of depression and darkness. There were times when he struggled to believe that God could possibly love him. He could not always see God's hand at work, and he could not always explain what God was doing. At his lowest point, God gave him a friend who walked alongside him. This man's name was the Revd John Newton, a former slave trader who became a pastor and a hymn writer. Newton didn't try to solve William's problems, nor could he explain his suffering. Instead, he remained present through friendship, prayer and encouragement. William, through that, discovered a gift for poetry and writing from this poetry hymns that have strengthened countless Christians over the years. Perhaps that is why William could write about God riding upon the storm. He had learnt that God's presence is often discovered not through understanding everything, but through trusting when we cannot understand. Our gospel reading today takes us into a storm. Jesus had just heard the devastating news that John the Baptist had been murdered. Now we should not rush past this detail, because Jesus is grieving and he seeks solitude and prayer. Yet even in his sorrow, he has compassion on the crowds and feeds the 5,000. Then he sends his disciples ahead of him across the lake while he goes to pray. As night falls, the wind rises and the waves crash against the boat. The disciples are battered by the storm. And then they see a figure approaching them across the water. Terrified, they think it is a ghost until Jesus speaks. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Peter responds, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you over the water." And remarkably, Jesus says, "Come, come." And Peter steps out of the boat. For a moment, the impossible happens, and Peter walks towards Jesus. But then he begins to notice the wind and the waves, and fear overwhelms him, and he begins to sink. Now, we could stop there and conclude that we simply need to have more faith, and we must keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. And there is truth in that. Perhaps, though, I suggest there's something deeper happening here. After all, how do we measure faith? Faith is not a spiritual achievement or a personal accomplishment. Faith is trust. What if faith is needed not only outside the boat, but inside the boat? The other disciples remained in the boat. The storm was raging, and Jesus was not yet physically with them. Their faith is expressed in not walking on the water, but staying together in the midst of chaos, trusting that somehow Christ has not abandoned them. And is that not so often how we find ourselves? Most of us will never walk on water. Most of us will never do something so spectacular as that. But we all face storms, grief, loss, uncertainty, disappointment, and fears. And the good news here is that it isn't just about doing the impossible with God and having more faith. The good news is Christ comes to us in the storm. And even more wonderfully, he continues to make his presence known through the boat itself, through the community of faith. Life is not often a cruise ship sailing through our calm waters. It's a storm-battered boat carrying imperfect disciples, you and me. Yet it is here that Christ meets us, strengthens us, and reminds us that we are not alone. William Cowper discovered through John Newton that God's presence becomes real to him through friendship and community. Sometimes the hand of Christ reaches through another believer who stays alongside us when the darkness comes. I'm going to suggest from this passage 2 quiet hopes we can reflect on. First, when the winds rise and the waves break over us, and every sign seems to whisper that God is far away, can we dare to trust that Christ remains in the boat? Though hidden from sight, he has not departed. Though silent, he is with us. Second, remember that no one crosses life's waters alone. Time and again, God makes his presence known through the steady companionship of others, through hands that help us, hearts that listen, and friends who refuse to let us drift. So let us take a moment now to consider who has journeyed with us, who's been beside us, and give thanks for them. For though the sea may be rough and the storm fierce, you are not abandoned. The waves may batter you, but they cannot separate you from the one who shares your voyage. Christ is with you still, and his love will carry you through the night. Amen.